I hope I'm visible and audible to all.
Yes, you are.
Okay, perfect. So it's such a great honor for me to give Mentors Talk today on this platform. And many thanks to Karishma, Imrose, and Smita and other organizers who put a lot of efforts in conducting this online YM 2021. Because it's not easy to organize such online event where you have like so many participants who are coming from different continents. So and yeah, so this is my third YM meeting, and the first YM meeting I attended, that was in Boston. And that time, like you, I was also like a young research investigator. Just after like my postdoc, I stepped into that role, and I was looking for opportunities in India. So that was a great window for me into the hiring process in India. And in that meeting only, I came to know about these wonderful funding opportunities, such as like DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance, Ramanujan and Ramalanga Fellowship. And these two, like Wellcome Trust and Ramanujan Fellowship, I was like lucky to have like both like these grants. But then I have to decline one because it's not acceptable to have two fellowship at the same time. The second meeting I attended was in Srinagar after I joined like as a assistant professor in IIT Kanpur, and that time I gave a brief presentation about my some little bit of pilot work, and I was kind of benefited a lot by the mentoring session led by Professor Shashidhara, and that was a time I was kind of struggling with a student who was having some mental issues. So that was a great opportunity for me, and now here I am to share my like experiences with you as a mentor and as an independent PI. Next, please. So again, like, so we all are not trained as a laboratory manager or manager in general, and we all learn on the job, like what we have to do, how we have to manage our funding or research group as a whole. So again, like most of my colleagues agree that as a independent investigator, as a PI, you have to wear multiple hats on job. And for me, like I would share this, that these two had, as a counselor and as a motivator, I have to wear most of the time. And if you have funding, if you're well funded, that then you maybe have a staff to do some of the trivial activities, but in general you need to know a lot, like how to direct your staff in which direction and what like you expect from them. Next, please. So this is my career path. Like, let me tell you, like, so I kind of studied from Aligarh University, like right from my 12th standard till PhD. And after my PhD, I decided to switch my research field. And that was like from genetic toxicology to cancer biology, which seemed a very natural progression. And with that dream in mind, like I joined All India Institute of Medical Sciences with Dr. Neeta Singh in biochemistry department. And then again, I moved as a CSIR research associate to NII, New Delhi. Then 2005, I joined McGill University. Like I got a funding from CHIR, an independent fellowship. Then after 2 years spending at Montreal, I moved to Michigan. And in Michigan, University of Michigan, I joined Dr. Arul Chinen's laboratory. So it was 2011 when I got promoted to research investigator. And that was the time I started looking back for opportunities like in India. And then as I told you, I attended YM meeting in 2011. And 2012, I was selected for the intermediate fellowship by DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance. And I was exploring different opportunities. And finally, in 2013, I joined IIT Kanpur as an assistant professor. Next, please. So why IIT Kanpur? It's one of the oldest IITs, established in 1959, and 42 years later, the institute realizes that they should have a biology department. So they established this biological sciences and bioengineering in 2001. And it's known for its multidisciplinary research environment. Dr. Renu Sarup mentioned that you need an environment that will foster this kind of like multidisciplinary research. Definitely it attracts bright and talented student. You have freedom to pursue any area of research that you want to do. Animal facility that you need for the kind of research I do, and a beautiful campus with on-campus housing that will allow my like hours, like how the flexibility in the hours of I put in my work, and also close to my hometown Bareilly. Next, please. So this is the glimpse of some of the multidisciplinary research effort that I have put in. So again, being in that environment where you have like where you could cross the boundaries of the departments, like, and then you kind of foster collaboration, which will be fructify after some time. So this is the best environment that I could be, and this is one glimpse of that. Next, please. So coming to my own research interest, so my research interest revolves around some of the problems related to biomedical science. So we, and that should have like some clinical significance and translation impact. So basically our group is trying to understand molecular mechanism involved in cancer progression of multiple cancer type, prostate, colorectal, breast, and glioblastoma. But today I'm going to only touch upon some of our findings related to prostate cancer. And we use multitude of techniques related to even molecular diagnostics, cell and molecular biology techniques, and mouse models. So finally, the goal is to understand the complexity of this disease and understand the underlying mechanisms, so that we could bring out like what are the strategies to deal with this disease. Next, please. So this is an image I put here. It's 2013, when I set up my lab. So you can see like it's very basic lab, and this was despite of getting a joining IIT Kanpur with the huge funding, India Alliance Intermediate Fellowship. But then what we believed in, that whatever facilities we were having, that like to start right after joining. So what I did, I started my group with two people. Like I started my group with Sarup, who was a postdoc, and Anukriti was a faculty spouse. And then we started just doing by simple things like, for example, while I was in US, I started like writing all the ethical clearance application for local Kanpur hospital, that is GSVM hospital, as well as IIT Kanpur, so that we could get some clinical samples to begin with. So after joining, we start like some simple conventional technique like immunohistochemistry. So that you could do by using couple of coupling jars and hot plate and kind of like very simple tools. So what my idea is like, so I think as an independent faculty, what I decided that I should go for low hanging fruits, and by doing that, I think I'll keep my team in a good spirit, so that they'll happy, and then not to be satisfied by that, go for like higher hanging ones as well. So if you look at this kind of a plot I put, so the whole idea is to go for the projects which have high innovation and high impact, and that you could deliver in like shorter period of time with less investment. But then you have to keep an eye on the project which have high impact and high innovation. So obviously these are the one that you should be aiming for. And some of these like the trap I put, it's not a good idea to invest too much of energy in the projects which are like low impact, because they will drain out your resources as well as energy. So it's not a good idea to get trapped in here. Next slide, please. So again, I will say like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Always have a plan B, C, and D. So for me, I had like one big question and another big question, two big questions, and then these are the projects which are long term. And obviously, if they're long term, they may have some high impact, and they are more consumable or cost intensive. Then for these kind of projects, you need a stable workforce. Stable workforce, you don't want to change the person every year or 2 years, and that is a problem with the Indian setup. We don't get, at least in my experience, the postdoc experience I have is like mixed. So you want to put a person, mainly PhD student or a committed postdoc, who's going to stay for at least more than 2 years. Then short-term projects or collaborative projects that I have. So it could be a peripheral question from a big project, or a small question which is independent project, or some of the collaborative multidisciplinary project from other collaborating labs. So I would prefer to put trained PhD student who could multitask, even an MTech student who proved that he has attained that maturity, scientific maturity, and postdoc. Then we also have like a new hypothesis on some risky problems or risky projects where the success is not certain. So these are short-term projects, obviously less consumable intensive. And then I would usually I put MTech or BTech student on these projects. So my whole idea is again, the whole is greater than the sum of its part. because I'm not a big advocate of dividing one big story into multiple smaller stories and then get multiple publications. So it's always good to have a bigger picture. So when I joined in 2013, one of the challenge in prostate cancer field was such a diverse disease, which has a great molecular heterogeneity, but none of the molecular subtypes were known in context of Indian prostate cancer patients. So that was a big challenge. So right after joining, I already collaborated with GSVM Medical College, but then I also expanded my collaboration with KGMU Lucknow and All India Institute of Medical Sciences Delhi, as well as a private laboratory in Gomti Nagar, Lucknow. Next, please. So this was as I mentioned that we already started with simple conventional techniques such as immunohistochemistry and all that. So this was the first study where we found that 49% of the patient, prostate cancer patient, they harbor this TMPRSS2 gene fusion, which is shown here in this slide. And then they also have higher expression of protein, and 13% of the patient, they show positive status for higher expression of SPINK1, it's a serine protein casal type 1. And this subtype is associated with higher glycemic score and poor survival. And none of these patients have like both like SPINK positive as well as renin positive. Next, please. So this was the first study from our group, which was the multi-institutional effort, where we have shown what are the different major subtypes in Indian prostate cancer patient and why is important. Like once you know these subtypes, you know how the disease is going to progress. And what we found was like 6% of these cases, they show RAF kinase rearrangement, which is obviously higher than the Caucasian counterpart. And these patients could be benefited by FDA approved inhibitors. Next, please. Next. So the next question that we asked was, what was the underlying mechanism involved in SPINK1 upregulation? So as I said, like in case of TMPRSS2, it's like gene fusion, but in this case, the mechanism was not known. And we discovered the role of two microRNA, which were epigenetically silent in SPINK positive patients. And we found that these SPINK positive patients, they also have higher expression of EZH2, which is a member of PRC2 complex. So it plays critical role in epigenetic silencing. So we kind of discovered the model, and then we proposed that epigenetic drugs could be used as adjuvant therapy for SPINK positive patients. Next, please. Then in this project, we kind of discovered the role of AR, androgen receptor, and REST in repressing SPINK1, and we have shown that when the patients are given anti-androgen therapy or AR targeted therapy, they result in overexpression of SPINK1 along with neuroendocrine marker. So eventually these patients, they progress to lethal subtype, that is neuroendocrine prostate cancer or NEPC. So it was a very important paper to show that in clinic they have to weigh the benefits of ADT and then also calculate or weigh the side effect of the ADT and then decide whether these patients should go under this regimen or not. And we also proposed like the use of casein kinase 1 inhibitor as adjuvant therapy so that like the patient could benefit from the conventional therapy. Next, please. So this project is very important because in this project, we kind of repurpose malaria drug for the treatment of castrate-resistant prostate cancer. And this, again, this project was led by my MTech students. So some of the MTech students, they could excel like with proper guidance and all that. And like what we have shown here, like when we give artesunate and bicalutamide, which is an anti-androgen in the mice model, we can see remarkable tumor regression. So this was a compelling preclinical rationale that artesunate could disrupt androgen deprivation therapy mediated resistance, which is commonly observed in castration-resistant prostate cancer patients. Next, please. So this is some ongoing work in the laboratory, which is unpublished data. So what we have, I've shown you is a heat map of some of the somatic mutations, which are like missense and nonsense mutation in some of the oncogene and tumor suppressor genes. So again, one of the important alteration that I'm going to talk about is like this cyclin dependent kinase 12. So we found two inactivating mutations specific to Indian cohort. And why it's important? Because this is a DNA repair gene. And because of this inactivating mutation, there's a like new antigen burden. or load in these patients, and these patients could favorably respond to PD-1 inhibitors. So that's why it's important to screen these patients. So overall goal or long-term goal for the group is to like unravel the comprehensive landscape of the contributing genetic and epigenetic aberration, which is prevalent in the Indian cohort, and also develop a focused gene panel which could be utilized for diagnostic and actionable alteration, and this could be like useful for future clinical testing. So now coming to the mentorship, like I'll take analogy. So in our hand, all the 5 fingers, they are not same, they are different, and likewise all the group members, they are different, they are emotionally and intellectually, they are different people. So as a mentor, it's important to give them more of a individual specific mentoring. So overall, my goal is to keep them stay focused, encourage them to utilize their true potential, and help them to achieve their objectives. So the mantra of my mentoring is to be available for them, like being there is more important. And then in return, I also want them to respect my time, because I usually don't entertain last moment assignments. So we have like this group meeting, and what is more important is the informal interaction that we usually have after our group meetings. So it's like easy, like a chat over a tea and snacks, and it will help me to look into them, like what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what is they're aspiring for, what is the bigger picture going on in their mind. So these informal interaction is very important. Time management. So again, I let them set their own goals, small or big, like with the realistic timeline. Then my job is to push them to achieve these realistic timelines. Then usually I don't micromanage my group. I give them space. It's like I feel like when the students, when the group is doing well, you don't have to do too much micromanagement. Usually the people who are not performing or who are lacking, they need more attention. So I do more close monitoring to those individuals. Again, it's important to spell out your expectation, written or oral, all the deadlines, experiment and publication, etc. is important to tell what is your expectation. Then more emphasis on presentation and writing skills. So first author, they are always encouraged to write the first draft of the paper. And again, most of the PhD students in my lab, I encourage them to go and present their work at least once during their program at international meeting, ACR and all that. And there are amazing opportunities for the student to go and present their work, such as so many like travel grants from DST, DBT, CSIR, as well as Indo-Shastri fellowship program. Next, please. So again, like food has amazing, property, amazing, property to bring people together and make them happy. So twice in a year, what I do, I open my house, I open my kitchen, my students come, they themselves cook the food, and then we eat it together. So this time they spend in the kitchen and the cooking help them to overcome many things. Sometimes if they have even some argument or something, so it helps them to, I think it's a binding force. Next, please. So coming to the mentorship that I received, so I was like very lucky to say that I have several amazing mentors during my career, and like that shaped me into a person that I am today. I was exposed to different mentoring style. So for example, Professor Neeta Singh at AIM, she is a kind of go-getter personality. Professor Amitabh Mukhopadhyay, his calm and composed nature was like remarkable. Professor Shafat Rabbani, he's like having a childlike enthusiasm about the research. Professor Arul Chinayan, he has excellent managerial skill. He manages like a group of like 70, 80 individuals in his lab. So unlike US laboratories or unlike US universities where they assign a mentor or two mentors to a new early career investigator, assistant professor, here in India, we don't have that trend. So when I joined IIT Kanpur, kind of because of the shared or common research interest with Professor Ganesh and proximity to his lab, like he kindly volunteered to be my mentor, and then it was very important. It was very helpful for me to get the insight what's going on in the institute and how to work around and what are the different things that I could. So what my belief is, like for any new faculty, it's very important to have a mentor within the home department or the institute, because it kind of acts as a guide for a new faculty about the working of the institute and the program, and how to get the funding and all that. So because I got my welcome test funding in 2013, so at that time it was not like compulsory to have mentors. Now I know it's compulsory to have mentors on your application. So in 14, I think they implemented and they asked me to put mentors, but it was optional for me. Then obviously, like I thought it's a good idea to put mentors, and I approached Ganesh, and he kindly agreed. And then I also requested Professor Sandhya Vishweshwarya was also a committee member in the India Alliance, and she also kindly agreed to be my mentor. And both of them, their constructive suggestion and feedback was really important for me to to grow in those formative years. And beside that, Professor Shahid Jamil, he's a former CEO at that time. He was CEO of the India Alliance. And Professor Shahid Jamil, he's always there as a support system for all the India Alliance fellow. And his most of the time, his constructive suggestions and guidance, especially like he always encouraged the fellows to push the boundaries and do well in that. So it was very important. I believe it helped me a lot. Beside that, informal peer mentor, I would like to mention. So these Saravanan, Mohan, and Anjali, they are more of a friend. They're not yet faculty, but I believe when these two people, they are like kind of a punching bags. So you get their honest opinion with no sugar coating, and it will help me to like improve and get better with the suggestions. So next, please. So again, like find your balance. Like it's more important when it comes to academics and administration. I believe like because time is our greatest asset, so we need to know how we are going to utilize our time and how effectively we can use it. So I think when you're new faculty, especially in your first or second year, like I think it's not a good idea to accept too many administrative responsibility. Few administrative responsibilities that will give you some idea is good, like some soft administrative responsibility, I would say. But then it's very important to once you feel comfortable in your role as a new faculty, I think it's very important to take some of these administrative assignment, because it will help you in your professional growth. It will give you a different perspective about these committees and in these assignments. So I think it's a mixed opinion, but I believe that's important to get engaged with these administrative roles. Next, please. So main challenges, again, as Dr. Sarup mentioned, there was a question about the failures, and I don't believe there are any failure. Each failure will tell you something. So that's why I didn't put. I put mainly what are the challenges that I face and how I kind of overcome those challenges. So previous slide, please. Hello, previous slide, please. Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges for me was getting the clinical collaboration when I came back to India. And we know like all the clinicians, they're like overwhelmed with so many like patients, they're like loaded with patients. So it's difficult to get their attention and time. But once you they're interested in your work and you sit with them, they'll give you very good suggestion, which is like related from which is from coming from a clinician perspective viewpoint. So that's how you have to make them like interested in your work. The other challenge that I face usually is a follow-up with the clinical sample. So usually what we do, we take the phone number of the patient or the relatives, call them for the follow-up. The other thing that I always do, keep pathologists on my team, because pathologists are very important people. They have all the detailed information, clinical information associated with this sample. So it's always important to have them on the team. Then getting the clinical sample is another challenge, especially from Lucknow, because I'm based in Kanpur, which is like 2 to 3 hours away from our campus. And also getting clinical sample from Delhi. So again, we kind of created our own cold chain. We purchased like some of the liquid nitrogen tanks and ice boxes, dry ice boxes, and that's how we are managing. Then the second challenge that I had was setting up the immunodeficient mice facility. Though when I joined, they had like mice facility, but my requirement was more to develop like a colony for immunodeficient mice, so it was challenging. So there was no space, so I created this facility away from the department in a deserted room, and it went well for 5 years, and then they caught infection, it crashed. One incident like is like once we had a meerkat in the animal facility. I think he entered through the ventilator, but it was quite an adventure to throw the meerkat out. But now we have moved to a new 3-story building, which is a like excellent mice facility. So no more adventures with meerkat. International consignment delay is common for the entire India, but again you have to plan in advance. And building and maintenance of the infrastructure is another kind of challenge, because at IIT Kanpur or most of the IIT we don't have like this kind of common cutting edge facilities. So most of the time the PI who needs certain kind of infrastructure, they have to develop or build, and institute definitely they join hands in helping us in developing the infrastructure. But most of the time if the equipment will break down, the funding agency is not going to give money for the maintenance. So again we have to somehow struggle. So one advice in the end, like I want to share, that is from Thomas Chase. He's a Nobel laureate from chemistry. So that what he said is, if I had one piece of advice to give, it's that although you have been hired for your scientific skills and research potential, your eventual success will heavily depend on your ability to guide, lead, and empower others to do their best work. Next, please. Next, please. So thanks. So in the end, I would like to thank my clinical collaborator as well as other collaborators abroad. So without their help, it was kind of impossible for me to set up the research program that we are having right now. And also like the funding agencies, especially like in India Alliance, because without their support, I would have not achieved what we have achieved right now. And my amazing group members, they're like, I'm truly blessed to have them, like such a fantastic team of researchers who are driven and self-motivated. And thank you. I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you so much, Bushra. That was a wonderful talk, very honest. And we really actually went through your journey with you, including the mice facility that crashed right at the end. So very tell all, very honest. So thank you. I'll take some questions from the Q&A box, Bushra. And I think Priyankar will ask a question live as well. So one question Abhinav Achrecha asks that when you start your position, you need to apply for more funding. When you're applying for grants, how do you balance really well thought ideas versus low hanging fruit? Low hanging fruit may not be novel enough and big picture ideas may be too ambitious. So how did you straddle this divide?
So again, like as I mentioned, I got my India Alliance funding while I was in US. So I got my India Alliance funding in 2012. And subsequently I moved here, and then I wrote like DBT small grant and another like SERB young investigator grant. So those were in small low hanging fruits, I would say. And then I was focusing more into like long term about my Wellcome Trust proposed work. So that's how I managed.
Okay, so you actually did a balance of both. Initially, it was low hanging fruit, and you also said that for your publications, you did that for your publications as well. Excellent. Okay, Priyankar, would you like to ask your question live?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm live. So thank you, Dr. Ateeq, for the beautiful presentation. And I'm Priyankar from Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology. So my question for you is that how do you balance the three main components of, as a faculty, the research, teaching, and also departmental work? Because, most of us are hardcore researchers, and this departmental part thing is kind of new to us. So how do you balance all three? Thank you.
So again, in the beginning, I was not having any major administrative responsibility. I was having mainly teaching and research. I was having soft administrative jobs like as a seminar coordinator or faculty meeting coordinator, but even that will tell you a lot. It's like a journey, as Dr. Renusuru mentioned. You won't learn overnight. So slowly you graduate, and then you will be assigned more difficult administrative job like DPGC convener or into different committees. So slowly I learn. I mean, I have to juggle in the beginning, but then you learn how to do it.
Priyankar, I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I think I agree with that also, Bushra. Some soft jobs just help you understand the system, especially if you've been out of it for a while. Bushra, one question which will be relevant to our postdoctoral fellows, that when you started coming up with your independent research idea, how did you come up with it? Question one. And two, how different was it from your postdoc work? You mentioned you were with Arul at UMation. So how different was this?
So again, it was, so I will say it was kind of not totally different, but again, it was a offshoot of some work I did in Arul's lab. my first the welcome to grant I put. So some part was like totally new, that was more in India specific context, but then some part was more into that Arul was not going to continue, and I thought like I should continue, take it to the next level, such as like he was more interested in diagnostic and other stuff, but Spink he was not going to take into like much more deeper details. So I thought like maybe I'll look into that mechanistic rationale and how the different therapies work. So I won't say it's totally new, it was offshoot, and I knew, I spoke with him, he was not interested, and then I thought it's a good idea to kind of invest more into that.
I think that's very useful answer for our postdoctoral fellows. One question, Bushra, that talks about YI is receiving mentorship, and I thought this was really interesting, and Divya mentioned it. So, all right, you were at IIT Kanpur, which is a well-established institute. It's been around for decades. But when someone's starting out at a smaller, newer institute, how do you get informal mentorship? How do you approach mentors outside your institute saying that, look, I'm a YI, but can you guide me on all of these fronts? How do you build that mutual trust?
I'll tell you, like, see, when I joined IIT Kanpur, I was having a lot of questions because I did my PhD from AMU. I have no idea. I briefly worked at AIMS and NII. So the working environment was different. So I was like, I didn't label that relationship that, okay, Ganesh is my mentor, but his lab was next door. So every now and then I'll go and I'll talk and I'll discuss and I'll always talk about my challenges I'm facing. So he was very kind. He said, okay. Finally, the term mentor I gave when Welcome Press asked me to put mentor, I said, okay, yeah, you're right. He's my mentor because he has been helping me with all these things. So I didn't label it. I think for everyone, all the new faculty who are even in smaller university, I think you have to talk. You have to approach people. They're people who are very nice. They're like ready to help you in your journey.
Absolutely, and we can also think of the power of virtual mentorship today, right?
Certainly.
Being
with this pandemic, we know the power of virtual sessions and meetings.
Yes, I said this very nice thought that you realized he was a mentor only when it happened, after it happened, right? During the process, you were just informally learning by observing him.
That's true.
That's wonderful.
But I think formal mentorship also has its strength because see, then you can sit down together. You can you can be very clear about what are the expectations, in which direction you're going. Are you just going aimlessly? So I think that is also important. I think formal mentorship and informal both has its pros and cons. So I think for me, I think in the formative years, informal mentorship worked. In 14, I put Professor Ganesh and Professor Sandhya Vishweshwari as my mentor. That also helped me in recognizing my own potential and doing the soul searching, whether I'm going the right direction or not. I remember once I had meeting with Professor Sandhya Vishweshwari when I visited ISC, and then she's, no, you are on the right track. Don't worry. It was such a great leave. I was like, no, I think I'm not doing well. So I think you need mentors. Sometimes they'll push you and then also tell you, okay, you're doing fine. Don't worry too much. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Absolutely. Bushra, another question that comes up about your collaborations. You successfully established a lot of collaborations, including clinical. So I'm combining actually two questions, one from Bhakti and I believe one from Kanika, which says, how did you establish the collaborations? Was it driven by you? Did the institute play any role? And how was this different for clinical collaborations?
I would say when I was in US, again, I wrote to my head of the department, and I wrote to Ganesh because he was having some clinical collaboration related to epilepsy and all that. So he said, okay, you can contact some clinician in GSVM hospital. So I set up like that, but then eventually I kind of explored on my own. And if you remember, I spent almost 1 year at AIMS New Delhi. So I knew few friends and clinicians. So I kind of network and then I approach them. So that's how it worked. Even some of the collaboration abroad also, I wrote to them. So if I write to 10 people, not 10 people are going to reply, at least 2 to 3 people will reply, and we'll have meeting and follow up. So follow up is very important. That's what I believe. And obviously keeping in touch with them. It's not once I'm done and then it's over. Some of my collaborators, we have been collaborating for almost 8 years, and they're very enthusiastic even now.
Oh, wonderful. So Bushra, a follow-on question to collaboration till we try and take another live question is, where do you set at what point do you set expectations that if a publication comes, this will be the terms of engagement?
The expectation for
outcome, for example, corresponding authorship on a publication, or funding? Who is going to jointly fund? How much are you going to fund? Where do you, in this process of building collaboration, set those expectations at the beginning?
So it's not possible, Karishma, to put those expectations in the beginning, and obviously corresponding authorship, it depends like how much intellectually they're going to contribute. See, if the idea is mine, if I'm spearheading the project, and somewhere in between they're putting their input, obviously because they're not like, shaping the project. So far I never had any collaborator who will demand for co-corresponding author publication. Though I had once experience about one clinical collaborator who want some resident to be first author. So you might have you might come across such incidences, but then very politely you have to little bit back off from those individuals, because you don't want to, and that too without contributing actually on the project.
Oh, absolutely.
Giving samples and expecting first author publication is not
it's a stretch. It's a stretch. Thank you for your honesty, Bushra. We appreciate that. I think a lot of young investigators will agree that that has happened. And I think another interesting question, we have a few minutes left, but when you come to hiring, how do you decide? Should I use this money for a postdoc? Should I hire a junior, senior research fellow? How do you plan this with respect to the project, the long-term vision of the group?
Mm-hmm. So usually one good thing about IITs or most of the Indian institution is all the PhD students, they get their funding from different sources, CSIR, JRF or DBT, or in case of IITs it's from MHRD. So if they're GATE qualified through our entrance program, they'll be funded by MHRD. So usually I keep some funding for postdoc, but then usually I support them briefly, but then I want them to write their own proposal. There's so many schemes like Welcome Trust, India Alliance, Early Career, and NPDF. I had couple of NPDF, but then I have a mixed experience with postdoc. So as I mentioned in my talk, they're usually not committed for long-term projects, so they'll leave in 1 year or year and a half. So that's why most of the projects that require long-term planning and more kind of thought processing, I put mainly PhD student, not the postdoc, unless they write their own grants and they come with the ideas and then they help.
That's a good point. It also encourages intellectual independence starting from them, rather than be giving you a written grant proposal and saying, no, execute. Right? Yes. There are different modes of mentorship as well. All right, I think we'll end it at that, Bushra. We were very excited to have you, and it has been a session that we anticipated would be very engaging, very lively. We have so many questions in the Q&A sheet. I mean, I'm literally scrolling down, and this can go on for hours.
I'll be happy to take questions offline, people all the PDFs or potential faculty candidate, they feel free to approach me by sending me email. So I'm fine.